What kind of town locks its doors on a hungry mother and her children? That was the question that burned in Sarah Brennan's mind as she stood in the frozen mud outside Dalton's general store, her breath white in the cold February dawn. Her 3 boys huddled behind her. Daniel, 12, wore a coat too small for him, sleeves ending above his wrists. Jacob, 9, clutched the coin purse tight in his mittened hands, hoping today they could buy flour. Samuel, 6, stood on one boot sole tied with kitchen twine, the other worn thin. Town people began arriving. Mrs. Henderson nodded at Sarah but looked away fast. The Reese brothers hurried inside with their usual loud talk. Young Tom from the mill tipped his hat. Dalton unlocked the door for every one of them. His smile was thin and polite, but when Sarah stepped forward, Dalton looked her in the eyes through the glass. Slowly, as if he wanted her to feel every second of it, he reached up and flipped the sign to closed. Jacob whispered, his voice breaking, "Mama, why won't he let us in?" "Quiet now," Sarah said. Her voice stayed steady, but her heart cracked. She turned her boys away from the window and led them toward the muddy street. Across the square, the church bell rang. People gathered on the steps, their clothes dark against the snow. Reverend Clayton lifted his hand like a judge ready to pass sentence. "Good people of Mercy Creek," he called, voice echoing through the cold air. "There are those among us who defy the natural order. A woman without a man's guidance endangers herself and her children." Sarah kept walking, spine straight, but she felt Samuel's small hand tighten in hers. "Sarah Brennan's family," Clayton continued, "is unwelcome in this house of God until she repents her obstinacy and accepts proper guidance." Faces turned toward her, some filled with judgment, some with pity, some with fear of being seen looking at her too long. Sarah didn't look back. She didn't want to see who stood with the crowd and who didn't, but one man did not look away. Across the square stood a tall man with broad shoulders and a weathered coat. Beside him was a girl about 8 years old, holding his hand. He watched Sarah with quiet anger in his eyes, anger not at her but at the people around them. For 1 second, their eyes met. It felt like 2 castaways seeing each other through a storm. Then Sarah turned away, guiding her sons toward the wilderness road that stretched 5 miles to their small homestead. Behind her, Reverend Clayton called out a final verse about pride and destruction, but the wind carried his voice away. Samuel stumbled. The twine on his boot had come loose again. Sarah knelt in the frozen mud, retied the knot with stiff fingers, then rose. "We don't need their town," she said gently to Daniel. "We have each other." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Before she turned away, she glanced back one last time. The tall man was still standing there. His daughter tugged at his hand, asking something. He nodded, then gave Sarah a small gesture almost too soft to see. She nodded back. 3 days later, the firewood ran out. Sarah stood in the doorway of the cabin, watching Daniel come back from the tree line with his rifle in hand. His face was red from cold and shame. "Nothing," he said. "Not even tracks." Inside, Jacob stirred the last rabbit bone and beans over a fire that was barely alive. Samuel sat by the window, tracing frost lines with his fingertip. Sarah ladled thin soup. 4 bowls. No seconds. When the hoofbeats came after sunset, she grabbed the rifle and motioned the boys back. 3 riders. A wagon full of supplies. The lead horse was black and expensive. Warren Kent, the richest man in the valley. "Mrs. Brennan," Kent called. "Might we talk?" Sarah stepped onto the porch, rifle across her chest. Not raised, not yet. Kent dismounted and showed her the wagon. Flour sacks, salt, pork, blankets. "I heard about your troubles," he said. "I'm a reasonable man. I can help." He pulled a paper from his coat. "Sign this and your boys eat through spring. Refuse and I file on your land taxes in April, $200. "You don't have it." Sarah kept her jaw firm. "And what does the paper say?" Quote, "Marriage," Kent said. "You become Mrs. Kent. Your debts disappear." Behind her, Daniel's breath caught. Sarah stepped forward slowly until she stood eye to eye with him. "I'd rather chop my furniture for firewood," she said, sharp as an icy blade, "than marry a man who uses hunger against children." Kent's smile didn't move. "You have 3 days. Then I file." He nodded to his men. They unloaded the supplies into the snow. Bait, not kindness. Then they rode away. When they were gone, Sarah stood shaking. Rage, not cold. "We'll manage," she told her boys. But that night, she counted the coins. $43, not even close. The next morning came gray and silent. Then came new hoofbeats, slow ones, a single wagon. It was the man from the church square. He climbed down and started unloading flour, nails, salt, timber, pork. His little daughter helped him lift a sack. Sarah stepped onto the porch. "I won't take charity." The man looked up. His face was weathered and kind. "Not charity, ma'am. I need work. You need a barn before spring. Your boys can help and learn. We trade labor, fair exchange. And what do you want in return?" He glanced at the little girl. "I want my daughter to learn that helping good people matters more than pleasing the wrong people." Sarah studied him, honest eyes, calloused hands. "What's your name?" "Wyatt Cole, widower." "Sarah Brennan, widow." He nodded once. "Then we understand each other." He held out his hand. After a long moment, she shook it. Inside the doorway, Samuel peeked at the girl. She waved. He ducked back shy but curious. And for the first time in months, Sarah felt a small spark of hope in her cold, tired chest. Why would a stranger choose a fight that wasn't his? That question stayed in Sarah's mind as Wyatt Cole set the first chalk line for the barn foundation. His daughter, Emma, helped Samuel gather kindling, both children laughing softly in the cold air. It felt unreal, almost like a dream. A kind man, willing to stand beside a woman the whole town had thrown aside. By sunset, Wyatt had measured out the shape of the barn. Snow drifted across the ground, but he worked steady, sure in every motion. Sarah walked over, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. "You know taking my side won't make things easier for you," she said. Wyatt hammered a stake into the frozen earth. "A man's word is his bond, ma'am," he said. "Out here you judge a person by what they do when storms come, not what they say when the sun's shining." Sarah looked at him, unsure what to say. Behind them, the boys watched through the window. Daniel's arms were crossed, but there was less anger there today. Jacob smiled every time Emma passed by. Samuel pressed his hand to the glass whenever she waved. The next morning, Wyatt and the boys began digging post holes. Sarah helped saw planks until her arms burned. The work was slow, but it felt honest. It felt right. But Mercy Creek didn't forget. By mid-afternoon, Warren Kent's foreman rode past on the main road. He slowed, staring at the half-framed structure. Then he lifted his reins and galloped off toward town. By sunset, everyone would know the outcast widow had a man helping her, and that man had chosen her over them. That Sunday, the church bell rang across Mercy Creek. People filled the pews. Sarah stayed home, but Wyatt felt something tug at him, something unfinished. So he rode into town with Emma and sat in the very back row. Reverend Clayton opened his Bible. His voice boomed through the room. "There are those among us who lead children astray, those who aid a woman who rejects God's order." Clayton's eyes locked on Wyatt. "You've been seen helping her," he said. "I urge you to reconsider, for your daughter's sake." The congregation turned, 60 faces filled with judgment. Emma's hand trembled. Wyatt could feel the fear in her small fingers. He squeezed her hand. "It's all right," he whispered. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Wyatt rose from the pew. Every head turned. Even Clayton faltered as the tall, broad-shouldered man stood straight and silent. When Wyatt spoke, his voice was steady. "Reverend, if helping a widow and her sons is sin, then I'm proud to sin." A heavy hush fell over the church. "If this town has no room for Sarah Brennan's family," Wyatt continued, lifting Emma's hand in his, "then it has no room for mine either." He walked down the aisle, slow and calm. Emma's small boots tapped beside him. At the door, he paused, turned back, and said the words that would echo through Mercy Creek for weeks. "So do I." Clayton's face went pale. Wyatt stepped into the cold morning. Behind the church, hidden under a leafless oak tree, Sarah Brennan had been standing the whole time. She had come only to listen, not to enter. Now tears froze on her cheeks. Wyatt lifted Emma onto his horse, then looked toward the oak tree. He saw Sarah. Their eyes met. He tipped his hat. She nodded, unable to speak. That afternoon, Wyatt marked new lines for the barn. The boys worked beside him. Sarah watched from the doorway, her chest tight, with something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Trust." Later she called out, "Supper's at 6. If you're staying, you eat with us." Wyatt looked up, surprised. "Much obliged," he said. "If we're partners," she added, "call me Sarah." Quote. He smiled faintly. "Then you call me Wyatt." Supper that night felt like something sacred. 6 people around a table meant for 4. Venison stew, fresh cornbread. Laughter from the children. Emma whispering things to Samuel, making him giggle. Jacob asking question after question about timber and hammers. Daniel quiet, but not leaving. Sarah watched them all. Warmth rose inside her. A warmth she hadn't felt in years. For a moment, she forgot the hunger, the harsh winter, the cruel neighbors. For a moment, she felt like she belonged somewhere again. The next weeks were full of work. The barn rose, plank by plank. Rain came, then snow, then mud. But each day they built more. One cold afternoon, Moses Red rode up on his old mare. Moses was 70, bent-backed and stubborn as iron, but his eyes were sharp. He brought nails, oats, lard, and a quiet smile. "Heard you folks were building," Moses said. "Thought you might use these." Sarah shook her head. "Moses, we can't." "Didn't ask if you could. I'm offering." He looked at Wyatt. "I know what it's like to be cast out for doing right. Defended a native family once. Town never forgave me. Their loss." He stayed for supper, telling stories that made the children burst into laughter. Even Daniel cracked a smile. Long after Moses left, Sarah and Wyatt stood on the porch watching him ride into the dusk. "Good people still exist," she whispered. Wyatt nodded. "Just harder to find in town," he said. But Mercy Creek had sharp ears. Warren Kent heard about the barn, heard about Moses helping, heard about townfolk softening. His jaw clenched. He slammed his hand on his desk. "Then we remind Mrs. Brennan what happens when she forgets her place." Orders were given, a plan set in motion. Trouble was coming. And it would strike through the one person Sarah loved most. What happens when a boy tries to be a man before his heart is ready? That answer came the day Daniel Brennan left home alone, carrying nothing but a coin purse and the weight of his family on his small shoulders. It was early April. Mud season had swallowed Mercy Creek. Daniel tied the mule beside the livery and walked toward Dalton's store, hoping, just hoping, someone would treat him better than they treated his mother. But he never reached the door. A shadow moved in the narrow alley. Then another. Warren Kent's foreman, Jed Murphy, stepped out first with 2 ranch hands behind him. "Well, look here," Murphy said, grinning. "The widow's boy." Daniel froze. Murphy's eyes dropped to the coin purse in Daniel's hand. "That yours?" "I earned it," Daniel said. His voice shook. "It's for flour." Murphy laughed. "Honest money?" "That's funny." The men grabbed Daniel, slammed him against the wall. Mud splashed. Daniel struggled, but he was 12, just 12. Murphy ripped the purse from his hand. $12, he said. "Pretty good. Tell your mama this is what happens when she forgets her place." They shoved him into the mud and walked away laughing. Daniel lay there shaking, not from pain, from shame. He didn't cry until he rode home. He tried not to. tried to be strong. But when Sarah saw the blood on his lip and the torn shirt, she ran to him. "Mama," Daniel whispered, voice cracking. "They took it. All of it." Wyatt walked out of the barn, his eyes hardened into something cold. He stepped inside the cabin, buckled on his gun belt, the first time Sarah had ever seen him wear it. "Wyatt," she said, grabbing his arm. "No. They beat a child. If you shoot them, they'll hang you. Then what? Emma loses you. My boys lose you. I lose you." Wyatt's hand trembled. Slowly, he unbuckled the gun belt and set it aside. But the fire in his eyes didn't go out. That night, Warren Kent called a town meeting. The church filled with whispers, spite, and fear. "A drifter corrupting children," Kent declared. "A woman living in sin. Danger to the community." Sheriff Hoskins stepped forward. "Mr. Cole, best you leave town for everyone's safety." Moses Red pushed himself to his feet. "Safety?" the old man growled. "You boys beat a child for buying flour." "Sit down, old man," someone shouted. "You should be ashamed," Moses said. "All of you." Quote, shouts erupted. Clayton's gavel slammed, but order was gone. The town had chosen its side, and it wasn't theirs. That night, on the porch, Sarah bowed her head into her hands. "You should leave," she whispered to Wyatt, "before they hurt you too." "No," Wyatt said, "I chose you. I chose this family. What if we lose this fight? Then we lose it together." Later, alone in the barn, Sarah cried. She cried for Daniel's bruises, for the hatred in the town, for the fear clawing at her chest. A storm rolled in that night. Cold rain, sharp wind. The barn's canvas roof tore loose, ripping into the dark. Sarah stood there, rain soaking her hair, staring at the ruined frame. She felt something inside her break. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Wyatt found her at dawn. "Yes," he said quietly, "you can." "No," her voice cracked. "I can't watch my boys get hurt. I can't let you lose everything for me. I can't." Wyatt stepped close. "You told Daniel broken things can be made strong again. Do you believe that?" "I don't know anymore." Quote, "Then I'll believe it for both of us." Sarah looked up, her eyes hollow. "How?" "Because you're still standing. Because your boys are still fighting. Because we're all still here. That's how." Her knees gave out. Wyatt caught her. She cried into his chest. Fear, exhaustion, and months of carrying the world alone pouring out of her. He held her until the storm inside her passed. When they walked back to the cabin, two children waited with a piece of paper. Emma and Samuel held it up proudly. A drawing, a house, a barn, 6 stick figures holding hands. "This is our family," Emma whispered. "We don't leave family," Samuel said. Sarah pulled them both into her arms. "No," she whispered. "We don't." That afternoon, Moses returned with a wagon full of supplies. Behind him came the schoolteacher, Mrs. Henderson. 2 ranchers who'd grown tired of Kent's cruelty. They carried timber, nails, cloth, chicken feed. "You're not alone," Moses said. They rebuilt, 6 people working together. And old Moses. And now neighbors with quiet shame and hope in their eyes. By sunset, the barn frame stood again, stronger. But danger wasn't done with them yet. One strange afternoon, the sky turned green. The wind went silent. Birds fled. A twister dropped from the clouds, roaring toward the valley. At Kent's ranch, men ran in panic. Sheriff Hoskins rode up, breathless. "We need help," he shouted. "Please." Sarah looked at Wyatt. They both knew they could refuse. "He tried to destroy us," Sarah whispered. Wyatt touched her hand. "But we're not like him." Sarah nodded once. "Let's go." At Kent's ranch, chaos ruled. Animals bolting, roofs lifting, people screaming. Wyatt worked like a man possessed. He saved Murphy from a fallen beam, pulled a ranch hand out of a collapsing shed. Sarah directed livestock east, knowing how storms moved. Emma and the boys helped round up horses. Together they saved most of the ranch. When the twister passed, Kent approached with shaky steps. "Why?" he asked. "After everything I did, why help me?" Sarah met his eyes. "Because cruelty answered with cruelty just makes more winter," she said. "Someone had to choose spring." Kent lowered his head. "I was wrong." Reverend Clayton stepped forward, voice breaking. "So was I." He looked to the crowd. "These people showed us what grace looks like, not judgment, but mercy." One woman clapped, then another, then Moses. Soon most of the town joined in. Daniel stood tall, dried blood still on his lip. Murphy limped forward. "I'm sorry, son," he said. "What I did was wrong." Daniel looked at his mother. She nodded. "Apology accepted," Daniel said. "But you owe me $12. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Murphy paid. Months passed. Mercy Creek softened. Doors no longer closed when Sarah walked by. Her land taxes were paid anonymously, though everyone knew Moses had organized it. Kent canceled all remaining debt publicly at a town meeting. The homestead bloomed in late May. The barn stood red and proud. The garden grew. Chickens clucked. Laughter filled the yard. Daniel worked at the forge. Jacob and Emma were inseparable. Samuel sang again. One warm evening, Sarah and Wyatt sat on the porch, watching the children play under the oak tree. "Will you let me stay?" Wyatt asked softly. Sarah turned. "Where else would you go?" Quote, "I mean stay as family." He took a small ring from his pocket, a ring made from a horseshoe nail, shaped and polished by his hands. "It's not much," he said, "but it's honest." Sarah slipped it on. "It's everything." Emma ran up. "Papa, does this mean Sarah's my mama now?" Sarah knelt. "If you'll have me," she said. Emma hugged her. Samuel joined. Then Jacob. Then Daniel, slow but steady. Wyatt wrapped his arms around all of them. A family. Not by blood, by choice. The next Sunday, Reverend Clayton asked them to stand before the congregation. "These people," he said, "showed us what the good book truly means." After the service, Sarah visited Thomas's grave. "I hope you'd understand," she whispered. "I think you'd like him." Later, Wyatt stood quietly, speaking to Mary in his heart. "I'm not replacing you," he said. "I'm learning to live again." Quote, that evening, the family gathered around the outdoor table. Lanterns glowed. Laughter rose into the warm air. Sarah's hand found Wyatt's. The homestead stretched behind them, whole, strong, alive. The sun dipped behind the mountains. Home wasn't a place. It was the people who stayed when staying was hard.